Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts. Today's tutorial webinar is brought to you by Ministry Design Training, and today we're going to be talking about master planning, preparing for master planning. First document that I want to review with you so that you can understand why we put it in here is the master plan research questions. On your computer monitor, you'll see that the questions that are listed here, and I've put 23 for you. The reason why I started doing this was that I have seen design teams go through and answer these as they go through the process, or maybe after the master plan is done, and then find out that there was something they should have known on the front end. So in order to help me and to help the church and any other industry professionals, let me suggest that we find a way to navigate our journey in such a way that we determine the zoning restrictions ahead of time. In other words, if you hired an architect who did not go and verify in writing how your church is zoned and the viability of your ability to get a zoning variance if one is required so that you can build again on your property. If you're building on existing property, you probably had to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a variance to build because you're neither commercial nor residential. It differs from community to community. But I throw that out to you because you better know if there are any zoning restrictions that would keep you from building certain type buildings or doing certain type things on your property. Impervious coverage is another one. By impervious, it's the water soaking down into the soil. So if you pave over it, concrete over it, or put a building over it, shingles over it, the water can't penetrate that square footage. And so you will find that with the zoning of a property may come impervious coverage ratio. Well, they'll say that you have to leave 75% or 45% or some percentage green space where the water runoff can soak down onto your property. You need to know what that is before you master plan it, because if you master plan your property to cover 75% of your acreage and the impervious ratio for your current zoning is 45%, you've planned to put buildings over more ground than you're allowed to. And you really need to go research this on the front end. Matter of fact, my suggestion to you is that you work with the industry professionals to go confirm these in writing before you put pen to paper to master plan your site. Or you catch my point, you've got to engineer your way and navigate your way through this. Deed restrictions. What if you've got things that restrict you from doing certain things on your property? You really need to know that before you buy the property. I have another tutorial that deals with site selection, with land selection, and in it is a full discussion of every one of these points in writing, and that's another tutorial that we're making available to you. Covenant restrictions and code analysis restrictions. You're trying to find anything that would restrict you from master planning and building out your property as you think God wants you to. Buildings are tools, and so is there anything here that is keeping you as you analyze and research and investigate the documentation, the zoning, and anything on the land that is going to keep you from being able to build out the facilities that you want on your property to carry out your mission so you can reach your vision on that property? Traffic requirements. Are they going to make you put in turning lanes, both directions, a deacceleration and acceleration lane? Are they going to restrict you to one driveway or going to make you put in a second or third one? You really want to find that out before you go too far in the process, because it can be cost prohibitive. It also will directly affect and direct your master planning, because where you put your buildings and parking is probably going to be dictated by how the drives end up. What about utility locations? You don't want to build over, plan to build in 5 years over the top of your major utilities being brought in. They may not let you move them. If they do, it's going to be cost prohibitive. You need to know where it is. It also, where you're going to hook it up to your buildings. All of this works together in the minds of your industry professionals to make everything work together. The life cycle of the property, the cost of running your buildings, and on you go. And utilities are an important part. Easements. Someone have a right-of-way through your property? What about environmental issues? There was a project in the Northeast that one of the companies I was working with, we were going to build. Then they found a protected spotted owl, I think it was, on their property they were relocating to, and they were stuck and never built on it that I know of. And so what about your subsoil conditions? You've got to put a building on it and park on it. Will it hold it? And you have to run tests to make certain, in perk tests for the water. Wetlands and floodplains, setback requirements. I ran into this as a senior pastor. I didn't know what a setback requirement was in 1984. I sure found out because the chairman of our building committee decided to and asked that, can we just turn the building to face more of the road? And when he did, we were in violation of the setback requirements. We had to go get a variance for that after we built the building. No one caught it while we built the building. That kind of thing happens. It was meant it for good and ended up being evil, or hindrance to us. What about local ordinances? Title exceptions, signage restrictions, landscaping restrictions. These are all things that you need to research to see if you're required to do certain things with your landscape or signage that would keep you. Hazardous material, where I relocated our Emmanuel the last time, where they are today, is across the street from a chemical plant, a plastics plant. And there is a subdivision on the other side of the street, and then another, half mile down or maybe a mile down into that subdivision on the other side is a plant. Well, we had to make certain that not only was there not some kind of chemical contamination on the property we were buying, but that we weren't going to be drug into some kind of environmental impact fees being required to clean up their problem on our property. And so I said, well, I never would have thought of such a thing. It looks like it's been horse pasture or cow pasture or farming land or forest. You better go research and dig into it and follow the direction of your industry professionals to be to be aware of this. Protected wildlife, drainage challenges. You have them. Impact and development fees, the cost of utilities and other things that they'll charge you, your fair choice or part of widening a road, putting in extra sewage lines, and any number of things that are impact fees. Your building on your property impacts your community, and therefore there are costs to them, and they're passing a portion of those costs along to you as the owner. Topographical challenges. First piece of property we bought at Emmanuel, the topographical from the highest point of the property to the lowest point of the property was 40 feet of difference. Only piece of property I've ever seen a church have, where, of course, I haven't been to West Virginia to look at all theirs, but where you could fall off of and kill yourself. So you want to look at all the restrictions and problems and challenges with a piece of property to determine what can you build on it? Is it feasible to do so? Is there anything that would kill the project? So in talking about this, let's talk about a feasibility definition. Feasibility study is this. A feasibility study should help you as the leadership and your congregation understand what should be built to meet the vision and needs of your ministry. It's going to balance your ministry and its needs against your financial capabilities. Once needs are clarified, a ministry plan is developed based on your financial ability and other constraints. We've just looked at some of the constraints that you're to research and find out. So in a feasibility study, you're going to collect and analyze information about your site, your facilities, your ministries past, present, and future, the demographics of your congregation and your community, and your projected growth. And it's really based on how you've done in the past and how you're doing currently as to projecting what percentage of growth every ministry in your church is going to have. So the study defines the needs of the ministry with respect to building and balances those needs against your financial capability. And so a feasibility study will help create unity and clarity of vision that should be a driving force in your congregation. So it's showing what's possible. Your biblical foundation for this, I just picked Luke 14:28-32, what man goeth to build a tower and what king goeth to war, and does not first look at his context, his situation, to see if he can afford to build and if he can win the battle. So if your church is unsure of whether you're ready to build, you need to look at doing a feasibility study to help you determine what is possible. And you have to balance out like a teeter-tot that balances your wish list, your wants, what you're willing to do as a ministry, and your wallet. And you've got to be able to afford to do in this first phase what you think you ought to do, what you ought to build next on your property. And so if you haven't developed a mission and vision statement with your values and a strategic plan, you need to do that because it's a guiding document for you to move your ministry forward to the next expansion project. Well, let's talk next with this. They're going to require you, your industry professionals are going to require you to do a boundary and topographical survey. So as a part of your master planning process, at some point in it, either before you hire the architect or as you're interviewing them, you're going to need thousands of dollars. Don't know how many in your area. It could be $3,000, could be $30,000. It's contextualized to your situation and your economic situation in your area. So the range there differs. But you go to provide a minimum topographical survey requirements. And so in this document, we're telling you what normally goes in it. See number 4, shown by contours of 1-foot intervals. And it's showing them how the land rises and falls. Every foot it elevates, it shows it. Every foot it goes down, it shows you the topographical level of the land. Because your civil engineer's got to deal with water runoff. Your builder has to deal with putting the building there. Your architect is dealing with the design of it along with your civil engineer and your other engineers. And you need to know, and this has just been an accepted document that I've used through the years to help just know what to ask the surveyor for. Now, I suggest you get out of the middle of that and have your surveyor and your architect work together with your civil engineer to make certain that no time or money is wasted by producing a boundary and topographical survey that gives the civil engineer and the architect and his team the correct information for them to design your building. So I wanted you to have this documentation so that you're knowledgeable about it, so you're not in the dark when you're talking about it. You want to be prepared and have your team prepared as you talk through this. You're, again, a counselor for yourself, and in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so there are a number of pre-con exercises that you can do in preparation for engaging with the design team. Feasibility study we've already talked about, but that's an exercise that you can do. We hope in the days ahead to create a software program that will allow you to do your feasibility study right in front of you and to help you see what is possible, what is obtainable, what you wish to do fits within your wallet, your financial capability. A healthy church index or healthy church study that you can do, that you get input from your congregation on a number of things, and it helps you to determine, is our congregation healthy? So when you survey your congregation, and you try and get every single one of them, every adult, to fill out the form online or a hard copy, you've got two companies that I would tell you could possibly use. Transforming Church is one, TCI, and then the Lawless Group is another one. And they go through to help you gauge it's like a church exam where you have a physical exam. This is a spiritual exam to find out what your church family is thinking, to make certain that you're healthy enough to go through a building program. This needs to be done on the front end during the preparation stage. And it's a good document to give you pages of information. Then there's demographic and psychographic and ethnographic studies that you can do. And I've explained this in another tutorial as one of the things you do to prepare. So you're looking at your congregation and its health, and I would tell you your congregation ought to be fit. Healthiness can be defined as the absence of disease. Everything is functioning normal. Fitness goes a step above that, and it's getting in shape to do a particular task. Your demographics and psychographic studies will help you prepare to make certain that you're building the right ministry space by looking at your community, not just your congregation, because you have to decide who you're going to build the building for. Just your congregation? Or are you looking to use it to reach out into your community, to reach the unchurched and dechurched, those that need to be rechurched? You're going to make disciples. So as you do this, you can also do strategic development studies where you can put together a plan, and we can help you with this, that shows you strategically where your ministry is headed in all its components. A civil engineer, your architect, builder can do a land and code analysis to look at the land restrictions and any codes that would hinder you developing your master plan as you want to. I would tell you along with this that you do a cost analysis that is performed by the civil engineer and maybe an industry professional who does site work, who does it all the time. That's their field. That's the area. They swim in it. To make certain that what you're planning to do and preliminarily what you want to do is even feasible. And then programming studies. These are as a summary of the exercises in part and whole that the church provides to the design team, telling you all about your ministry. Now, I've got a tutorial on our programming exercises and programming example, and the rule of thumb for how many square feet per person and for each activity that you're doing, so that you can put together a programming package, because the design team is taking that information and study that you've done and is going to use it to design your next building. And then a budgeting development is part of what you do in order to help you move ahead and budget correctly. If you miss this, if you budget not enough money, it's going to hinder or stop or kill your project. You've got to design, plan and design within your financial capabilities. So as we look at these things, what about the long-term vision for your campus? So you've got this piece of property. You maybe have built on it twice. You're looking at building a third time. This document, if you fill it out and add your own thoughts to it to contextualize it, and give it to your design team, will help them know what your vision is for the future, so they can give you design options for master planning, completely developing every square inch on paper of your property. So it shows the full development of parking and detention and retention ponds, ball fields, pavilions, buildings, both your worship and education and fellowship and administration and recreation, anything else that you're going to do on that property, that you're showing your ministry design fully lived out as you fulfill your vision on that property. What's that going to look like? Well, you've got to answer these questions so they can know what to include on the master plan. And by the way, you master plan every time you go back to build. And so I've gone through and asked 11 questions for your campus, your weekend services, your midweek services, your special events you're doing, maybe quarterly or biannually or annually, economics, so that you're doing things that you're wise with your money long term. Studies have been done by industry professionals that show that 65 to 75% of the cost of a building over 35 to 40 to 50 years is in the carrying of that facility, not the construction of that facility. And so you look at the economics to make certain you're stewarding God's money for a couple of generations here, for 40-year use of the building. Technologies, education, and your facilities. We ask you all these questions so that as you consider how you're using your ministry and how you plan to use it so that they can include these things in it, then you have to prioritize it. Special ministries, philosophy, programming, and practice. I put an area there with 15, 20 questions for you to grab a hold of to help you think through that aspect. And then I've given you next steps. Prioritize your list of answers. You've got to know what's mission critical, first, second, third, and fourth, and what should be included in your master plan for the first phase in your master plan. So, along with priorities is a strategic master plan for your ministry. What will your ministry look like over the years as you grow? Growth projections for each ministry. Your master plan should follow your strategic ministry master plan. And you want to provide a detailed document for your architect. I've given you a rule here and a special note for you to consider this, and then some miscellaneous notes, instructions as you go through to create this document of a long-range vision for your campus. Now, there are some general planning that you need to do as you carry this out. And this document should be helpful to you as you consider the preparation and planning exercises for your church's building program. I've talked here about the long-range vision, strategic plan to fulfill your long-term vision for your campus, and then perform research exercises. We've talked about the facility studies and demographic and psychographic, ecographic, healthy church studies, programming studies, and budgeting studies so that you can carry out land code and analysis. It's another document to reinforce the other document I showed you a few moments ago for you to understand the importance of what is happening here. Then there is the master planning process document that I've given you. And so this is a planning questions for the church to ponder in preparing for your meetings with the design professionals. Your ministry design needs to clearly articulate, and you have to go through the exercise to discover your values. What values are driving your ministry? How do your core values distinguish your ministry from the other churches in the area? Your mission and vision statement, and your strategic plan. These are a part of the documentation that you would be wise to give to your design team so they can understand your ministry design, your financial capability, and your ministries as a need. Prioritize them. What is mission critical? This is a part of your ministry design so that you are telling them as a ministry what your design is, how you function, what your formula for success is, what your future looks at, your funds that you're going to spend. All of these things are put together so that they can take that information and come back with a plan for you to perfect together. Affordability and design guidelines is that you've got to balance out your money and your ministry design, what you want to build next. And so a summary here for you. A needs analysis identifies the ministry space to be designed. A financial analysis determines the budget, size, and quality of your first project here. and you've got to balance together 1 and 2. Then I've given you a master plan process that you'll go through with the architect. Now understand, the architect probably has his own steps that he follows, and it has its own flavor, its own atmosphere and feeling. But here are the steps in a summary as you go through it, what you're going to be doing in order to succeed in their general steps. So you go through the master plan with the architect, defining and prioritizing your needs. What should be built? What are your most important urgent needs? What's mission critical? You set your budget. You do your master plan. You're coordinating that with all the other industry professionals. So you come away with a phase 1 floor plan and elevation, a site plan, and maybe a artist rendering or a 3D software presentation on your computer that you can show to the congregation on your with your projector on your screen. A capital stewardship pledges, lending capabilities, and cash on hand. You verify those so that you can move ahead to the construction documents, which is the next general step in the process. After your master plan and you've got all your ducks in a row with your money, then you're going to release them to develop your blueprints, your construction documents, your construction drawings. They're called different things. You move from that to construction, from construction to facility management, and you create a plan and a process for stewarding your new facility along with your existing facilities. These have to be done in order to help you move your ministry forward. Well, I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm Marshall Shannon, your pre-construction navigator with Ministry Design Training, and may God bless your efforts. I hope this tutorial has been of help to you. Please comment with any questions you've got, and we'll discuss it in our weekly or bi-weekly live webinar.